You're listening to the Higher Attitudes Podcast, inspiration to lift your soul. Hello, Tom here again, and I have one more show for you devoted to Philippians chapter 4. In the first two shows, I talked about verses 6 and 7 of this chapter, the most underlined verses of the Bible. And there's good reason for this, as these verses hold the key to our happiness. I would say secret, but it is hardly a secret, as God has had His prophets declaring the message of these verses from the very beginning. The message is that if we learn to trust God enough to surrender to Him all of our fears, He will protect our hearts and minds, and He will do it because of the great sacrifice Jesus Christ made in our behalf. All this, and what does He ask of us in return? Well, let's read verses 8 and 9. So in verse 8 it says, "Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." So the ask of us from this verse is simply to think on things which are honest, just, pure, lovely, of good report, anything virtuous, anything praiseworthy. Now, in verse 9 it says, "Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me." And this is Paul writing, the Apostle Paul. He simply says, all of these things which you have seen and learned and received, do. Simply do them. And God, or specifically, and the God of peace shall be with you. Great blessings, great promises. And we need to think on positive things and do what we have been taught in the Scriptures and what we have seen other great men and women do before us. This is doable. I mean, we can do this. Why are we dissuaded? Why are we turned aside from such a simple path? Well, there's good reason for that. But God has prepared a way if we desire to follow Him. So Paul is telling us here to allow God's grace to work its intended miracle within us. He is telling us to let go of a negative focus in our thinking. How can we let go of our anxieties, as we are urged in verse 6, if we then refuse to let go of all things negative in our own attitudes? Yes, it takes a lot of practice to let go of grudges, judgments, jealousies, and all the rest. But this is what the peace of God, His reconciliation with you and I, His mortally flawed children, is meant to enable. As He forgives us, He asks us to forgive. As He sees in us only our good, He asks that we learn to see in others only the good. And if you don't believe that He focuses on the good within us, I want you to try an experiment. Try praying, and during your prayer, do nothing but point out every personal flaw you can think of. Your own flaws. Try convincing God to hate you, to feel about you how you may sometimes feel about yourself. I promise you that your prayer will be vain. There will be no effect, because God does not give in to such negative rants. I should know. I've tried it. I can't feel horrible about myself and involve God. You see, He won't participate. And when you have tried this and you are spent and can go no further in your scathing self-judgment, all that will be left is a feeling of God's love. It will wait for you to allow it to flow into your heart. This love is patient, and you will exclaim, as others have before you, "Oh God, how is it done?" We may not understand His grace immediately, but we can do as He asks, as Paul recommends. We can stop passing judgment on ourselves and others. We can replace our judgments with recognition of whatever we find that is good. We can learn to recognize the inner voice that warns us against such foolish blindness towards our faults. This voice says that the only way forward is to learn that we have to recognize our faults and do all that we can to fix them. Oh, you'll hear this voice often as you try to do as Paul says, and notice all that is pure and just and lovely in yourself and others. And when you learn to notice this voice, know that it is not your voice. Know that it is the devil's own whisperings that he wants you to take credit for and ownership of. You see, deep down, the devil is a coward, refusing to own up to his own dirty work. You are the one who is brave and good. And if you do not believe me, ask God to show you the truth of this. After all, Paul tells us to think on whatever is true. Let's each start with the truth that God sees everything good within us. Let's think about extending this blessing to others by turning a blind eye to their faults and instead find something good to notice. And then compliment yourself. Do it again, maybe a third time. You need to practice. Compliment a family member, those closest to us. They need to hear positive words, encouraging words from those who are closest to them. When you get good at this, when you can compliment yourself, honestly, in the mirror in the morning, when you can compliment a family member and really mean it, and believe me, they will know the difference. Then you're ready to go out and compliment a stranger. You don't have to wait to compliment a stranger until you get really good at the other compliments. In fact, complimenting the cashier at the grocery store on their smile, on their good service, complimenting anyone you run into, it'll soften you up. It'll get you ready to perhaps even go the other direction and compliment a family member or some other person who's close to you, but it will also prepare you to compliment yourself. May each of us allow the miracle of God's peace to work within us this year. May we exchange anxiety for peace. May we exchange negativity for all that is pure, lovely, and of good report. Thank you for listening. We'd love to have you join us on Facebook at facebook.com/higher-attitudes. Do you have an uplifting thought to share? Why not join our Facebook discussion group? Visit the group at facebook.com/groups/higher-attitudes to request membership. If you'd like to leave a question about a challenge you're facing, or if you'd like to share a thought about how you've overcome negativity, call 719-301-0303 and record your question or comment. Please note that carrier rates may apply. Again, call 719-301-0303 to leave a question or comment. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to you joining us for the next episode of the Higher Attitudes podcast. Please remember that the advice offered in this show is intended for informational purposes only. Please read our full disclaimer in the show notes.